Welcome guys, this is Scott back with another video on my new webcam. I've recorded a few on it so far and I can tell you that the quality is so much better now. I'm able to focus better without having to hold my phone and bigger screen. So yeah, the new webcam was definitely a good investment for my continuing effort to do videos and stuff. So they're doing well there. So today's video, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts, kind of a review on, or my thoughts slash a review of Wonder Woman 1984, which released in theaters and on HBO Max on Christmas Day. I personally went and saw it in the movie theater, and which I'm glad I did. It was good to go to the movie theater over the holidays. So now for the movie itself, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But definitely glad I went to a theater to experience this, and it looked good on the big screen. I will say this movie was definitely meant to be seen on the big screen. So enough jibber jabber. Let's get to my actual thoughts. So just to be upfront, I do not outright hate this movie. This movie Wonder Woman 1984. This movie is no Dragon Ball Evolution or Batman and Robin, or any movie you think of that's just an outright travesty. This movie is not that. I did not outright hate this movie, but I was extremely disappointed in it. So I'm gonna tell you why. But before I get to before I really get into the problems with this movie, let's talk about the positives that I found. Well, first and foremost, the acting. The acting in this movie is fantastic. Gal Gadot continues to shine as Wonder Woman. She did great as Diana. I mean, she did. Frankly, I think in some ways her acting has improved. In a lot of ways as this character. The longer she's in the role, the better her acting will become. But she's a great choice to play Wonder Woman. To me, Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. That casting nailed it. The other actors in the movie do good too. Chris Pine is back as Steve Trevor. He does great with what he's given. Pedro Pascal plays Maxwell Lord. He's good. Kristen Wiig plays Barbara Minerva or Cheetah. She does good. So all the acting in the movie is well done with the material they're given. And we'll get to the script in a minute. But the acting across the board for what they were given was good. The acting in this movie worked for me. Special effects. The special effects are fantastic. Very cool to look at. The opening scene of this movie with Diana on Themyscira as a child, that's the best scene in the whole movie. Arguably. And the special effects and the cinematography, this is a beautifully shot movie. There are some really cool shots in this movie. Cinematography and special effects, beautiful. And when there actually is action in this movie, the action scenes are decent. Not the best action in any DC stuff I've seen, but the action scenes are at least most of them are pretty enjoyable. I enjoyed watching them. And my last positive is the musical score. Hans Zimmer did the score of this movie, and it was awesome. They do play the Wonder Woman theme like that, the one from BVS, and then her last movie. That score came back in a couple of scenes. That was really cool. And then there's one scene that near the end where they play the Beautiful Lie soundtrack from Batman vs. Superman, and you'll know it when you hear it. That was cool. So the music in this movie, great. So acting, special effects, cinematography, music, and most of the action scenes, pretty good. Or the action scenes are pretty good. So this is a well-made movie, no doubt. The biggest flaw with this movie, and it's the most important one of the most important things in the movie, is the writing. So let's get into why the writing is kind of bad. Well, for one, the story in this movie is just so choppy. Like there's like tone contrasts, and the people that wrote this movie didn't write the first one. The first movie was written mainly was not written by this. Patty Jenkins directed the first movie, but it was not written by her, and it shows here. The first one was a well-structured narrative with a first, second, and third act leading up to the final battle with Ares. The first one was a well-crafted story. This one is not. This story goes all over the place, and there's so much going on, and it just feels so choppy. This is not a well-crafted story with a clear first, second, third act. And it shows abundantly. So the story's choppy, and now that's going to lead me into pacing. The pacing in this movie is terrible. There are parts that drag on way too long, and parts of the movie that are just boring. in the first Wonder Woman, even when there wasn't action scenes going on, I was never bored. I was invested in what was happening on screen. And this one, there are parts I'm just like, get on with it, man. There are parts of this movie just drag on way too long. And then now let's get to the villains. Well, for one, Cheetah in this movie is totally wasted as a villain, which is unforgivable because she is one of Diana's arch enemies, if not her main arch nemesis. Like Batman and Joker, Superman and Lex Luthor. Cheetah is pretty much her main nemesis, and Cheetah in this movie is totally wasted. Now that's not to say she can't come back, but for her role in this movie, she was totally wasted. Maxwell Lord, played by Pedro Pascal, terrible main villain. I mean, he's kind of corny and over the top, and which I guess it makes sense for the 80s, but still, I mean, this is still a movie made in the modern day, and for a villain, he was totally corny and over the top, and the climax with him at the end is just, it didn't pay off for me. I mean, I could kind of see what they were going for, but the payoff of the climax in this movie, like the final act, totally not what I wanted, not what any fans wanted. Especially after when you go into a superhero movie, you expect certain things to deliver, and this movie did not deliver in the final act, in my opinion, for sure. But I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but if you see the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, pacing is terrible, very choppy story. Villains not that great. Cheetah was totally wasted, and Maxwell Lord was not a great main villain. So actually, and then I talked about the pacing. The action scenes in this movie.
Could you please repeat it?
Oh, sorry, my phone went off. Turn that off. Okay, sorry. So the action scenes in this movie, there's not near enough of them. The first one had so many good action scenes in it. The No Man's Land scene, the battle in the village, the final battle with Ares at the airfield. This movie has no memory. Well, I say that. There's the opening scene with Diana on Themyscira. That's the best scene in the movie when she's a little girl. But other than that, there's really no scene in this movie I was like, man, that was a great action scene. The action scenes were totally not as memorable as the first one. And there's not near enough of them. Like I said, there are parts of this movie that just drag, and that really drags this movie down. So my negatives: pacing, terrible villains, Cheetah totally wasted, parts that drag way too long, and just a choppy story. Just poor writing in general. Now, that being said, I kind of want to make a comparison to the Arrowverse and two of their best stories, Crisis on Earth X and Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yes, the CW or Arrowverse has a lower budget. For there, I liked Crisis on Earth X and Crisis on Infinite Earths a lot better than this movie. I mean, those crossover events had a lower budget, but they had a better story, a better crafted story, and a better payoff at the end with the final battles. So when I say that a TV movie, even though they're both DC, but when I say a DC TV movie is better than a cinematic DC movie, you know something's wrong. So the Arrowverse crossovers were better than this movie, and that is saying something a lot. So, but what are some things that could have been done to make this movie better? Well, I came up with three main things. Number one, this movie should never have been set in the 80s. This movie should have been set in the modern day post-Justice League. And that would have helped a lot. Because we want to see... Now, the first one being set in World War I totally makes sense. It's Diana's origin, and it was a great movie. Totally made sense. But after that, when we've seen her in Justice League interacting with the other heroes like Superman, Batman, and the Flash, we want to see her story in the modern day continue after that the team has been formed. So it would have helped the story a lot if it was just set in the modern day post-Justice League. The second thing, Cheetah should have been the main villain. Now, Maxwell Lord is not a Wonder Woman villain in the comics. I mean, yeah, they fought, but he's not one of her main villains. In the first one, he had Ares, and who is one of her main villains. Cheetah should have been the main villain of this movie. That would have helped a lot too. Number three, it should have featured maybe her appearances from other Justice League members like Batman, Superman, or Flash. We as fans love to see our characters cross over, even if it's just for like a little cameo or a team up at the end. We love to see our favorite heroes cross over. This movie had none of that. We want to see these characters cross over. So having another Justice League member appear would have been cool. Superman or Batman, Flash, whoever. That would have been cool. Now, That's things that come into matter. Now, that being said, there were a couple of cool Easter eggs in this movie that I want to talk about. Two main ones. Number one, the name drop of a location, Bealia. In DC lore, in the DC universe, Bealia is a major location because it's where the villain Queen Bee comes from, and it's where the superhero Blue Beetle comes from, basically. So, I guarantee you that was thrown in there on purpose to kind of tease stuff coming down the road. So, Bealia being name dropped as a location, that was really cool. And then, remember, the second one was a villain name drop, the Duke of Deception, who created this dream stone that the whole movie revolves around. So, the Duke of Deception is a major Wonder Woman villain in the comics, so they might have been him coming later down the road. So overall, guys, I did not hate this movie, but I was very disappointed. But I'm still glad I saw it. There was enough enjoyable things in there. I didn't feel like I wasted my money seeing it. But it could have been so much better. So I give Wonder Woman 1984, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. Not the worst movie I've ever seen, but definitely one of the weakest superhero movies I've ever seen. So, especially after the first one was so good, you know, we wanted an epic sequel and they kind of dropped the ball. So, anyway, guys, but I do recommend you see it. I think there's enough enjoyable stuff in there that you wouldn't feel you wasted your time. But this is probably my least favorite DCEU movie to date so far. So, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts, and I can't wait to make more videos. For my next video, I'm planning to do a video on why I love the Arrowverse. I can't wait to talk about that one. So, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and peace out.